Hi, I'm Michael Bean, and this is your myfreeactingclass.com lesson for, let's say, Wednesday, September the 23rd. Today, we are going to be talking about improv, and we're going to be talking about commercials, and we'll see if we can get some fun practice in using the folks who are here in the session with us. First, just sort of in some general ideas talking about improv or improvisation. Uh, there's an entire range of improv. Improv is often used to talk about improvised comedy. So a lot of the time when people say improv, what they really mean, is improv comedy. And there there's a lot more than that. The kind of improv that you're likely to be asked to do in commercials is more like improvised acting. It's you pretending that you're in a place. And so the pressure to be witty or to make jokes, hopefully is lower. There's less necessity for that. There's less pressure for that. Uh, I did professional improv and taught improv for about 4 or 5 years before I got into film and TV. That was my life between about 1998 and 2002. And I worked with a couple of improv companies here in town and one in Seattle and a number of sort of private companies. For me, it was a really solid foundation. I really enjoyed improv, partly because it was terrifying. And mostly what I wanted to do is I was like, I want something that like makes me feel, and not having a script because I really want to get it right. That's I want to know what to do, and I want to know what the rules are, and I want to get it right. And improv doesn't allow for very much of that. It constantly puts you into contact, with the places where you cannot know in advance, and you have to put yourself into the unknown. You have to put yourself in that place of tolerating the discomfort, which I think is very relevant for film and TV acting. In some ways, film and TV acting is building your own tolerance for discomfort. Is learning to trust that it can feel very weird on the inside and still look exactly right for the character on the outside. So a couple of like absolutely straightforward kind of foundational rules if you're doing improvisation, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of background in it and just gets thrown in, which will often happen in a commercial. They'll be like, "Have you done any improv?" And you're like, and it's like, "Great, okay, so just pick up the cereal box and say some funny stuff." Uh, ah, that's a lot of pressure. And so what often happens, of course, when people put that pressure on themselves, is that they collapse. And so the um, there's an improv teacher and who's written a number of books, and I believe, still heads the Loose Moose Theater in Calgary. He's the guy who founded theater sports. He was the sort of first person to come up with the format that now is sort of all over the world as theater sports. His name is Keith Johnstone. He's an English actor who moved to Calgary, and very quirky guy, uh, very excellent, clear ideas. He's got a couple of books. Impro is one of them. So Keith, and then Johnstone, I believe, is Johnstone. Keith Johnstone. If you wanted to look him up, see if you can get his book from one of his books from the library. One of the things that Keith says in his workshops that I really, really love and I think is useful for film and TV actors, right? You don't put pressure on yourself to be stand-up comedy, to be a stand-up comedian. What he says is, uh, don't try and be awesome. He said, don't try and be funny. Be average, be obvious, but do it right away. So very often, in improv, the funny, yes, it can come from being very witty, and some people spend so much time with that, but that by the time they get on stage, they're used to doing that with their friends. They've really put in tens of hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours thinking of funny things to say, and and basically saying lame stuff with their friends over and over and over again, until finally they kind of like figure out their own way at it. And they're like, "Yeah, I got this now." But and what you're seeing is not somebody who's like uniquely magically gifted at that. What you're seeing is somebody who just wants it so bad that they've watched hundreds of hours of those TV shows, and they've spent hundreds or thousands of hours practicing with their friends and like being goofs and doing it imperfectly and saying dumb stuff and figuring out what makes people laugh, and then just like learning experientially to do more of that. And so if you don't have those extra 1,000 hours to put in, you know, one of the things that is foundational for a lot of humor is surprise. Yeah, and so this is sort of the root of Keith's basic idea, which is that because your experience and your thinking is different from my thinking, that if you open your mouth and you say the very first totally obvious thing that comes to you and you say it immediately with as little pause as humanly possible, because it's not what I was thinking, it will surprise me, and often I will laugh at that, and it will be funny to me, because but it comes from the spontaneity. It comes from the, like, you being willing to jump off the cliff and tolerate the discomfort of, like, I don't know what I'm going to say, peanut butter, and the and just staying in it. And so because spontaneity can be just as funny, as this as wit, as the folks who've put in all of this time, but it requires you to take the space out. It requires you to not pause first to think of the best or the perfect thing. And it requires you to ride the wave of, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth and I'm not sure about it, and that freaks me out a little bit, and include that in the performance. That really, that's the thing that brings it to life. So Keith's note is be average, be obvious, but do it right away. So if we get to doing some demos with the commercials today, what I'm going to ask is that you try that. Be average, be obvious, and do it right away. Now the other thing, and I don't believe I heard this from Keith, I believe I learned this from Randy Dixon, who is the head of Unexpected Productions improv company. If we're ever allowed to A, go to theater again, or B, go to the States again, highly recommend that you go check out Unexpected Productions in Seattle. Their company for at least 15 years or longer has always been gender balanced. Like they've always had at least as many women as men, and often more women. It's very unusual for a theater sports company, or at least, and it really was substantially more unusual 15 or 20 years ago. And the story that I make about that, is that uh, fast, witty, I'm going to try and make people laugh improv comedy, the stuff that is closer to stand up, rewards um, rewards kind of male, or like kind of like normatively masculine approach to the work, which is like, look at me, yeah, I did something dumb, laugh at me, like, let me take the attention, and this more relational approach of, we're telling a story and I'm being a good actor, that is sort of more normatively feminine, has historically been very difficult to pull off in an improv comedy setting. That some people do it, and improv companies here in town often pay lip service to it. They say, yes, telling story is really important, but then if you go watch their shows, really it's about the jokes. You're like, oh, okay, that's fine. So the one of the things that I recommend, if you're looking for improv classes, for instance, is like, check out, I mean, when we're allowed to do that, is that you check out their shows. You go watch one of their shows, and see, like, are they actually about telling stories? See, are there as many women on stage as there are men? Are people supporting each other's stories and building them together? Because those are the kind of things that you look for in training. Now, anyway, back to Randy. So one of the things that I learned from Randy is, again, improv can seem magical, but doesn't have to be magical. And so to add to Keith's, like, be average, be obvious, do it right away. I'm going to give you Randy's, use your life, like, add your life. Because if you're making it up, especially if these people don't know you, they don't know that you're using real details from your life. And so especially if you're making it up, instead of saying, mom, I have to make up my mom, just say, hi Nancy, and I'm like, I'm gonna use my mom because my mom's name is Nancy, and I'm gonna talk to her, and now that I know it's Nancy, I know exactly who she is, and it's just like, it's the first person that came to mind, and I'm be like, oh gosh, really, do you have to do that thing again? Here, let me do that for you. Like, I can think of 1,000 things, now they're easy to do in that interaction because I've spent so much time with my mom, and I can use that person. So if you want to play in this be average, be obvious, do it right away. And then you want to bring some depth. You want to bring a level of detail to it. Use your life to fill in the bits. And so those kind of two basic pieces should get you through a lot of improv. That and just enjoying yourself, which I think is foundational for any kind of comedy, is that if you are enjoying yourself, much easier for us to enjoy you. So the sun has come out in the middle of my lesson, and so now I am very patterned. Uh, the So be average, be obvious, do it right away. Use your life to fill in the pieces. Yeah, and then we'll think that you're a genius. We'll think that you're making up all these details. But and you get to give all of this detail. Now, I will also add that in a commercial, if you are ever asked if you can do something, and I'm going to practice this with you right now, be completely honest, but start with yes. And I know that sounds like a contradiction. I'm not saying lie. I'm saying start with, yeah, I've done that once before. Yeah, my friend took a class. He told me about it. It sounds so fun. Because often when you are asked a yes or no question in the context of an audition, what they're doing is qualifying. They basically are only listening for yes or no. And so if you start with yes, you start with positivity, and then you are completely honest with the next thing that comes out of your mouth. So if somebody's like, "Hey, do you ride a skateboard?" and you're like, "Yeah, I tried it once." Like the right, not a lot, but man, it's really fun. Right. If they say, "Hey, can you do a backflip?" Then no. Like, I mean, right? Like, I'm not saying lie. I'm saying that if you are asked and you have the option, then start with yes. Right. So all of you have done some amount of improv, or at the end of this class will have done some amount of improv. And so, Christina, I want you to practice with me. Unmute yourself. And I'm going to ask you. Hey, like, do you do improv? Because we're in an audition, and you're going to say yeah, and then you're going to be completely honest in some way that doesn't put yourself down. And it's okay if you don't get it right at the beginning, right? We're just practicing. So, hey, Christina, thanks for coming into the audition. Do you do improv?
Yes. I love doing improv, and it really helps me to my brain to work faster and to get more education in improv.
Right.
And
Yeah, exactly. And you might qualify like I've done a little bit at school, right? But you see, like, she's smiling, she's positive. She didn't lie and say like, yeah, I've done tons of it. She just started telling me what she loved about practicing it. Fantastic example. Dia, if we were going to use you as our example, and you'd be like, Dia, thanks for coming for the audition. Do you do improv?
Yeah, I really love it, and I've done a couple of workshops, and I'm interested in always learning more. And it's just so fun to have a great vibe and relationship going, and I love it. It's so much
Yeah,
fun.
see, and that's it. It's the positivity. It's like, yes, I did some. I like it. That's really what all they're looking for in terms of qualifying whether or not they can consider you for whatever it is they're looking at. Now, um, oh, Dia, you said Second City. Heard it's very good. Some of my students have taken their online classes. I would be interested, in if any of you check them out, hearing what your experience of those is. But I have at least one student who's taken several of their online classes and really liked them. So I know that they are. Second City is so like it's like Second City and the Groundlings in Los Angeles and the Upright Citizens Brigade, in New York. Like those are sort of like the three biggest improv companies in North America, probably. And so checking out sort of what they're offering online and seeing if that's available. Who knows? Maybe they're doing some free improv classes that you can check out. So let's look at a couple of commercial scripts. So commercial scripts come in all shapes and sizes. You'll have noticed that the scripts that we've been using for film and TV very consistent in terms of their formatting. It's a professional script. They're formatted in almost the identical way. Commercials are always coming from different ad agencies, and so they're often very visual. Sometimes they're very confusing, looking, but really like it's the Wild West. Everybody's writing them up or drawing them up the way they want to. Yeah, and so you have to be prepared for that when you look at a commercial script. That you might have to do some sleuthing and go like, what is exactly going on here? Uh, and so, um, for instance, we've got this one. So this is got a storyboard. Great Wolf Lodge, open on a family in their living room. Dad, our favorite family getaway is a trip to Great Wolf Lodge. They're watching home movies from the trip to Great Wolf Lodge. Cut stock images, water slides, theme room wave pools. It's a totally unforgettable experience. Cut back family camps. Dad wistful. Ah, the memories. From out of nowhere, a huge wave soaks the family. Yep, vivid memories. So if you're the kid in this, the SOC is silent on camera. It means that you don't have any lines scripted. The reason I have this is because one of my students auditioned for it. SOC. So if you're auditioning for this, SOC doesn't mean that you should not make sound or say anything. It just means the SOC, very confusing because it actually stands for silent on camera. But if you audition for it, you've got to make sound. Oh my gosh, like you have to use words and sound, because if you don't, you sound so weird. If you're like, and like, and you don't even like make sound, then we're like, what is going on with that guy? And so really important if you're doing an SOC audition that you include that. Right, so that's one. We can we can have you all be soaked by the wave, as your improv. I pulled a commercial from Upper Deck because it talks about improv right in the opening. Project Kids. Here's some notes for you. Know all the lines. The fun part will be that you can bring some personality to it with a little ad-libbing. So ad-libbing in the context of acting means being able to make up lines. And often ad-libbing comes at the beginning or at the end. They will often tell you, either in the breakdown or in the waiting room. We want to have a lot of fun with this. Really engage. They're the buddies. Da 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 da. Be yourselves. Have fun. Now, I think I've got a right preview food store. Okay, so this is a lot of commercial scripts look like this. Fridge talker, open on a male customer in the dairy section. So this is, instead of a storyboard, this is written out. Sometimes you will also see visual on the right up of the visual on one side and the right up of the audio on the other, including, and there'll be voiceover lines. It can get very confusing. So we can do another whole session on commercials. It's probably a good idea to do one of those. An older woman watches him as he appears to strike up a conversation with a container of yogurt. I wanted to thank you for telling me about organic yogurt. Fix the yogurt. What you're teach. Who knew? Other than you, of course. Ha 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 ha. This is absolutely the kind of right. Comes in for a closer look and is handed a container of organic yogurt by a foods employee standing inside the cooler. She waves to him awkwardly. Right. So the joke from the outside is that it looks like he's talking to yogurt, and then it turns out he's talking to a person in the cooler. This is exactly the kind of thing where you would go in memorized with this line memorized, and they'd be like, and now just ad lib the conversation with the yogurt, and that would be the place where if you didn't have a lot of improv experience, would want to bring that spontaneity to it. We're just like, cool, I'm going to decide who it is. It's my friend Chuck. And I'm just going to talk to him the way that I talk to Chuck, and everybody else is going to be like, whoa, you improvised that? That's amazing. So much depth and personality. And you don't explain to people, yeah, I'm just talking to my friend Chuck. You just do that, and they say, wow, and you say, thank you, and you leave. Right? But if you make it easy for yourself, then you can go in and be successful with something like that, potentially. Right? And then this one was all in German. And then there's like the translation on the second page, but again, we've got the storyboard of, what's going on, storyboard. Commercials typically won't say the name of the product often, because that's their sort of attempt to be secretive, in the way that film and TV projects, will often be like, have secret names. Commercials are often like Project Z, Project Toothpaste. And you're like, we know what kind of toothpaste it is. Like, you say it in the script. You're like, shh, no, it's Project Toothpaste. Okay, so Caden, you want to be soaked by a wave? Good, so make sure you unmute yourself. Right, and there really is no, what is the cue line for it? I think the dad says something like, the memories. So I'm going to say, the memories. And then, whoosh, You're going to be soaked by a giant wave, and you're going to react, and you're going to say whatever you would actually say if you're soaked by a giant wave. And remember, it's not horrible. Because commercials are so much about selling stupid stuff to people, that especially for kids commercials, it's a lot about just like being happy on cue and saying 3 words. So don't think about it too much. You're going to get soaked by a wave. So you're just watching the TV. Look at the TV. Stand by, and the memories. Gloosh. Good. So when I say gloosh, you're soaked by a giant wave, and you're going to respond as though you're soaked by a giant wave. Caden, do you understand? Okay, good. So one more time. The memories. And gloosh! Okay, great. And so do you remember what I said about you have to make sound and use words and use your whole body? So what I need is, whoa! Like, big down, big, and then you're going to say something, anything at all. Right? So average, obvious right away. But this thing that Caden is doing, very, very normal in improv, which is like, what do I say? Oh my God, I should make it up. Ah! And your brain like totally flatlines. So it's a good idea to practice. But just so you know, Caden, this is a completely normal thing that's happening to you. And it happens to me, and it will happen to Dia, and it happens to everybody when they're doing improv for the first time. So just give it a shot. Doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. Remember, just treat it like it's real. Big feelings about stupid stuff. You've been soaked by a giant wave, but you're like, but it's kind of fun. Stand by, and you're watching the TV, and yeah, the memories. Gloosh!
What was that?
Great. And the reminder that you also have to make sound. So you could see that, like, because he didn't make sound when he got soaked by the wave, super weird, right? It's really hard to believe that it's happening. Christina, same thing. Let's see you get soaked by a giant wave, because you're sitting in a chair. It's really easy. It's very unlikely, especially these days, that you will be asked to go into an audition room with other people. It used to be that like they might bring in 3 or 4 people at a time, and then it's really hard not to get like anchored on what other people are doing. So in this case, because you've just seen Caden improvise something, I need you to shake that out of your mind, and give us the like pure Christina version of it. So looking at the TV, exactly. There you go. Just smiling, enjoying yourself. Stand by, and action. Yeah, the memories. Gloosh!
Why am I so red?
Good. Again, and just enjoy it more. Right? Remember, it's about selling stupid stuff. And in the storyboard that you got, they weren't upset about it. Right? They're like, yeah, right. When we got soaked by waves all the time. It's dumb. Commercials are so dumb. I get parents who are like, is my kid ready to audition for commercials? And I'm like, can they stand in the right place, look in the right place, and say 2 words? Yeah, then they're probably fine. Stand by. No disrespect to the people who make commercials. Making commercials is very difficult. Auditioning for commercials is not going to require a whole lot of complex acting, is what I'm saying to you. Okay, ready, Christina? Stand by, and action. Yeah, the memories. Gloosh!
Whoa, what was that? I'm soaking wet.
Yep, exactly. And it can be as simple as that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Caden, did you want to jump in with something?
Can I do it again?
Can you do it again? Sure you can. Of course you can. Stand by, and the memories. Gloosh!
What was that?
Now that's the kind of thing you can absolutely do if you were doing a recording at home. You're like, that's actually a great, I assume, yeah, Caden, that's your dad, Daryl, who's helping you out there. But like, that's actually really smart. Like, why not? Like, maybe you don't want to like fully dump a bucket of water on yourself, but like maybe you do. Like, you can't do that in real audition. But at home you have so many options. Like, you can be creative. You can like break the rules in these little ways. So Dia, let's do the yogurt one. It's okay, you don't have to stand up, but choose like which friend of yours, and especially if it's somebody like weird or funny, and you're just gonna like put them just to one side of the camera, and you're just gonna like enthuse to them about organic yogurt in whatever way you normally talk to that friend. And so then you're being average and obvious right away, but we're like, whoa, she's making stuff up. And the more animated you are, the more closer you are to like sort of fun commercial land. So, frozen. Okay, I'm back. Just had a little internet hiccup. Here we go. Looking at the person who's giving you the yogurt. Stand by and action.
I had been feeling irregular for maybe 4 or 5 days, pretty much since the lockdown started, and I really think this is going to get the job done. I mean, it's better than nothing, right? What do I have to lose?
Right, exactly. See, and you see how embarrassed she is about it, but how much she's enjoying that embarrassment. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that people think is hilarious. Is it like you're essentially being embarrassed so that we can laugh at you? And as long as you keep the embarrassed and you put it into the scene, then we're like, ha, she's really funny. And you don't have to be witty in order to do that. You just have to do the good acting thing of like containing the discomfort and allowing yourself to be there anyway. And what you find is the more times you do that, and especially the more times you do it and experience yourself as successful, the easier it is to do it next time. You're like, okay, yeah, I can feel super weird, and that might not mean anything is wrong. In fact, maybe that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Not a lot of experience in improv, so.
Right? And see, like, and if you didn't qualify, like if you hadn't told us that, then we wouldn't know that. Because we're seeing because from the outside you look delighted. Right, like embarrassed, but you also look delighted, which I think is a lot of the time what they want for commercials. So especially if you happen to be somebody who, when they're nervous, smiles, this is going to be good for your commercial life. Right? If you're somebody who, when they're nervous, is like harder, that's harder. That's right. Like then you got to do a little bit more practice. But if you're like, if this is your like, I'm kind of terrified and I have no idea what's happening face, then probably they can use that to sell stuff. And so you just don't explain to them that you feel weird, and which if you're doing a self-tape, you're not going to do anyway. All right. There. We got our half hour in, even though we started a little bit late. Those are great suggestions. Thank you for helping me kick off a little lesson on commercials. And maybe I'll prep a couple more commercials for tomorrow in case the ask me anything day is slow. I'll go over some of the commercial examples that we didn't look at today, and maybe we can even use them for practice because there's some fantastic commercials that are just like super weird. All right, thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.